Hey, 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 everyone. Welcome, Thinking into Greatness community. JT here. It's Friday. I used to call these days Fun Fridays when I was an educator. And Fun Friday, just sort of tell you a random story because it's Friday and it's fun, is Fun Friday always used to mean to me tournament day. So we would always play these like random games where it was, yeah, let's just have fun. It was like old school recess where you get a ball out, you get people on teams, and you just go for an hour. And that's what today's all about. Today is an opportunity to come together, to connect with like-minded people. It's about having some fun, learning in the process, and making today really about, yeah, just taking things to the next level. So first and foremost, whether you're tuning in live, whether you are catching the replay, I want to acknowledge you. I want to acknowledge you for choosing to make greatness the standard in your life, for choosing to invest your time and energy into your most important resource, which is you. So here's what I'd like you to do. For the next 30, 40 minutes, go all in, right? Like really join my special guest and I over that next time and really just listen to the conversation. He's going to share with you some powerful, like his journey on the words to greatness, and you'll take something away with it. I promise you, if you go all in. So my guest today is someone who I've known for a while. We do go back. We and it's been amazing to reconnect. We were saying before we came on that life's interesting that way. You can sort of be on a path with someone, and then you kind of take your own path. But then again, one of the laws, right, of the universe is you always seem to find the people that you resonate with that seem to be like-minded as you. My guest today is a former student, right? I've worked with him in our student athletic association back in the day. He was one of my go-to leaders from when he first came in. And now he's an up and coming leader in the sports world, doing a lot of amazing work with multiple sports organizations. He has a great website. He's doing some podcasting, some writing. So again, super interesting guy. Please help me welcome into the huddle today, Rhys Desmond. Thanks for coming on, Rhys.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here, JT, and talk everything about leadership and everything else with you. It's really good to reconnect, and then also really good to jump on a call with you and help share some of these ideas with everyone listening in.
Yeah, you know what, Rhys, I love what you just mentioned, right? And that's the idea. Like all we're doing here is we are sharing an idea, right? And it's almost like a game of volleyball or hockey or soccer. We'll go to soccer because I know that's warm and yeah, that's near and dear to your heart. But in order to really make a big shift in life, you have to be open to accepting an idea. So it's almost like you're accepting a pass from a teammate in sport, right? That's really what we're doing here, just sharing some ideas. Okay, so Rhys, again, I know some of our community, or a fair bit of our community will know you, but for those that don't, or maybe those that haven't chatted with you in a while, what I would love to know is what role has sport played in your life? Like what really is it about sport that sort of speaks to your heart?
Yeah, sports have always been a major part of my identity since I was a very young kid. I was always like a super competitive guy, and I just hated losing as a kid, especially. And you just get so invested in sports because you like that feeling of like winning, but then it's also fun too. Like it's just fun to play. Any sports really are. I was just always invested in playing any different sport. And it became a major part of my identity, no matter what age I was. Really, like high school, running was a major part of my identity. When I was younger, hockey was a big part of my identity. It was always just this major thing in my life, but it was not only good for me, like good mentally, good physically, it was also very bad for me as well. I had some very negative sporting experiences, and I think that definitely led me on a path towards the future and the present right now of wanting to make sure every kid that has a sporting experience has a positive one if I'm able to be in their environment with them and make sure that they have those same positive outcomes of sport that I had and avoid some of those negative outcomes that sport can have. Because you and I both know that sports can be great for all of these reasons.
Yeah.
It can also be bad for many reasons too. And
Yeah.
so when I'm looking at sports, it's like I want to make sure it's only the positive. And yeah, it's always been a major part of my life. And now I want to transform that into inspiring other people.
It's amazing. And one of the things that really caught my attention as you talked about it was, from my experience doing this work, right, of coaching my clients, of helping people realize their potential, like you're doing, is that the most purpose driven, the most fulfilled, the most joyful people are ones that essentially are trying to sort of solve a problem, right? It's like they identified a problem in their past,
Yeah.
something that they want to better. So I love, and that tells me a lot about why this is the right path for you, right? Is you are looking to make things better, which again, that's what every successful person does. So one thing that came up as you talked about it, and anyone that knows you, you are definitely when I first met you as a grade 9, and I had the pleasure of teaching your sister, working with her, same, student athletic association. But the one thing that I loved when I first met you was you had this quiet, like you were very quiet, but you could tell like there was this hunger and drive, like you said, to push, to like do the work, to prepare yourself. Is that something that you've always had, or is that something that you just sort of picked up over time?
I think it is something that I always had. Like, I was named as the captain of my hockey team at a very young age, and I had like no leadership qualities whatsoever. It was just more about like the fact that I had sort of these qualities of like being a responsible individual that others could kind of like look toward. Even though I was like very quiet, I hardly ever spoke a word to anyone else. And like that quiet drivenness, I think, was definitely a key part to a lot of my sporting success in the young ages. But as I grew older, I think I just became more comfortable in myself and became more confident in myself as well, and more comfortable sharing who I am in different parts of my life, which I didn't really do before it. Throughout high school, when you knew me, especially, I was definitely more of that quiet, driven individual, and I could still lead and still be loud when I wanted to, but I wasn't like the one on the main stage, like chanting as loud as possible. I was probably a little bit more in the background doing that chanting.
Well, and the one thing I will let you know, that I always saw that in you, like that ability to lead. And you might have realized it, you might not have realized it, but there are always opportunities where myself and some of our other SAA leaders, right, were always put you in positions where if we knew something needed to get done, we knew that you were always willing to take that on. And we always, and I personally always knew that I'm going to give this to Rhys, because I know if by delegating this, he's going to give 110% to it.
I appreciate that.
So one thing that I would really love to know was, it sounds like you've sort of found this, you have this desire to take your love of sport which has obviously played a major role,
Yeah.
right, in your life. I mean, you were soccer, right? You're a high level soccer player. You know, you're high level at running. You played hockey growing up. You did all that, but then you combine that with your leadership. What sort of prompted you to combine these two, you know, talents, abilities, and skills, and sort of have them form a baby? What was the decision behind that?
I don't know. I think I just always had a passion for helping other people. Even if I wasn't always like the loudest person growing up, I still had this really key passion for helping individuals. Maybe not necessarily like large groups of people, but I had a major passion for helping individuals. And so, like, as I started to get more and more into different leadership roles, like the Student Athletic Association, like you talked about, and the cross country team, where I was a bit of a leader there as well, even like grade 9, grade 10, even, I started to gain, I think, that confidence in my abilities to lead, and sort of wanting to push that into other areas. When I got injured at 17 playing soccer, I just thought, you know what, I would rather do at this point, not stress about being the best I can possibly be at running, at soccer, because I keep on getting injured and it's not good for my mental health. I'm going to take up coaching instead. And that was a decision at 17 years old that completely changed my life. It really did. And now I'm in a place where coaching has been a major part of my life for 8 years. And it's been one of the best things for me physically, mentally, transforming my career. It's been massive. So starting out from an aim of like wanting to help people, and now using that passion that I have to now helping a larger audience has kind of been the pathway that's led me here.
Again, I just love that. And this is something that all successful and highly effective people do, is they have the ability to innovate and pivot, whatever you want to call it, right? And we just need to take a look at the last year, right? It's been an interesting year, to say the least, right? Depending on when you're watching this, right? And if you really take a look at the people, the businesses, you know, that are really thriving right now, right? It's not to minimize what other people are going through, but it's really having that ability to sort of change course and do things different, right? And pivot and find opportunities
Mm-hmm.
to change things. So I acknowledge you for using that, you know, that injury as, okay, what's next, right? Like, yeah, I don't want to put myself in that position anymore, but I still want to help.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, you know, coaching is near and dear to my heart. I mean, I've dedicated my life to coaching, and like you, I love helping and being of service to others. What has been the biggest thing you've taken away from coaching the last 8 years, transitioning from an athlete, competitive athlete, to now a coach?
Wow, there's so many. It's hard to just pinpoint one, I would say, for sure. But in terms of like a holistic thing of like not just thinking about it in like soccer specifically or running or anything else, like the biggest thing for me always is seeing the smiles on the kids' faces, making sure that they want to stay in sport. And sometimes I do lose track of that, and I have to remind myself, this is what I'm doing it for, and this is what's most important to me. Because sometimes in my last few years, even, I've started to have this sort of approach that a lot of coaches do, where you start to focus more on like the results and the winning and the money and stuff like that. And you start to lose touch of, why am I really doing this? It's to make kids happy. It's to make kids want to stay in sport for the rest of their lives. It's to inspire other people and make families happy, because not just the kids are happy, but the parents are happy when the kids are happy as well. So with the club that I'm currently at, which is Norwest, it's a community club that focuses on mainly recreational soccer. And that's been a really good home for me, because it's kids who just want to play, and it's parents who just want their kids to play. And it doesn't matter what age they are. We have 3 all the way up to 18. And we help no matter who wants to play, if it's a 3-year-old or it's an 18-year-old, we can provide a place for them to play. And I think being in that kind of environment allows me to constantly remind myself of what I'm doing this for and who I'm doing this for.
Oh, that's such insightful words, Rhys, in the fact of, what I really heard from you was, being clear on your purpose, on why you're doing things. And that is something that every successful, highly effective person, any great leader does. So I really want to acknowledge you for seeing that, right, at, really at, the starting stages of your coaching career. That's amazing.
Thank you.
One thing that you brought up that I really wanted to hear more about was, it's interesting, like you talked about it, because anyone that has spent time coaching or has realized that, it's funny, you can only, and this is something that I've learned from my mentor, Bob Proctor, is this, that you can only serve one thing. You can serve people, right? You can truly be focused on helping them realize their potential, or you can focus just on external metrics, like you were talking about, right? The number on the scoreboard, how much you're getting paid, right? How many goals you're scoring, but you can't do both. But the interesting thing happened was, when you focus truly on helping, of being of service, of helping people realize their potential, which I know is something important to you, and people generally feel that from you, and that is something, like, that's a feeling, right? That's where we are connected heart to heart, because I have your best interest at heart, you have my, right? That the wins, the money, the goals take care of themselves, right? And we're all, it all happens to us sometimes, where we sometimes lose sight of why we're doing it. Like, we're about helping, but then we also want to win. So I've just learned from my own experience that when you truly focus, like you said, on helping, of serving, of helping people get to where they want to go, everything else takes care of itself.
Yeah.
Right. And I actually learned that my last few years of coaching high school football. And it was interesting. I focused more on helping our athletes, whether it was helping them win that season, whether it was helping them get to university, whether it was just helping them be better students. And that was the differentiator, because they were all in. They would run through the wall, right? And then the wins and all that stuff took care of itself.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, because I see a lot of coaches still today just doing things like yelling at players, punishing players when they make mistakes. And I don't believe these things are necessarily helpful, because it's not about that side of it that you're talking about. It's not about the fun. It's not about connecting with the person and inspiring them to do better. It's just about, like, ridiculing them for making a mistake. And I don't even know what it's about, really. Like, I don't understand why people do that. They think it's beneficial. All of the science would say it's not. And going off of what you said as well, my first year coaching a competitive team as the head coach, we won, I think, 2 games out of 20 the entire season. But what was really special about that season was we were together the entire time. Every single player bought into what we were doing. 14 out of 15 players came back the very next season to play on that very same team. And we, the next season, had much better results. We won or tied more games than we lost. And that was massive for us, being a team that before didn't win very much. And it wasn't necessarily because we did anything like spectacular in our training. Sure, I developed new skills as a coach, all of that, but it was more about the fact that we had so much fun doing what we were doing, and we all liked being together as part of a team. And then we made it happen to have better results the very next year. So I think absolutely what you're saying is true.
Oh, that's, I love that, Rhys. And what that really resonates with is that you didn't allow the external results, right? Yeah.
Mhm.
Like, would you have liked to win more than 2 games that year? Absolutely. Like
Mhm.
I know you, like I know, but you were truly just focused on providing a great experience of helping your athletes, right? Helping the athletes maximize and reach their potential. And
Yeah.
then, and then you just did it, right? And it was sort of that idea of cause and effect, right? Is when you focus on there and you help people have fun, you help them feel good, then the byproduct is going to be the results are going to come, right? It may not be that season as you saw, but the next season, hey, the athlete 14 of 15 came back, and then the results start to change.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay. So I would love to know, again, you're very involved. You're involved actually with 3 soccer organizations, which is
Yeah.
super cool. And you are involved with different, like Norwest is more, for fun, more recreational, but
Yeah.
you are also involved in some of the most competitive soccer in the city as well. And
Yeah.
not just in the city, but I mean, it's a national. I'm curious, as we transition out of this interesting time, what would you say, how does sport, how do coaches, how do athletes need to sort of innovate coming out of this? Like, is sport going to look the same? I guess is my question to you.
I hope sport will look the same sometime in the future as it was before, but I don't think it's going to be anytime soon. I think we're constantly going to need to continue to adapt and continue to have to plan for these sort of like worst case scenarios in case anything happens that we should really be prepared for, but we always aren't because sometimes we just don't know what restrictions are coming our way and we have to suddenly adapt on the fly. But I think like planning for these things in advance, just planning for these worst case scenarios to happen is really key. And with the sort of like, will this be how it is for a while? I think it will be. And it's just very important for athletes, for coaches, for administrators, whoever is in charge, even above us, of like making these decisions. Safety has to be the priority. And if we all are on the same page about that, I think we can all still have these same sort of common goals and values in mind and still achieve great things in sport while prioritizing that safety piece. And I think that's been the biggest part. I think a lot about all of this in terms of since we returned to play in June and July for most sports, it's always been prioritizing safety, making sure the kids feel safe, making sure everyone feels safe, coaches, all of us. And then once that is in place, we can still do all of these same things that we used to do and still help these people reach their potential.
Yeah, I love that. And even just hearing your answer speaks volumes about you being very aware of what this is about, right? It's about putting our, the athletes and coaches in an environment where they can be happy, healthy, and well, right? And then once that's taken care of, all the other stuff, then we can start talking about, how to move forward. Okay.
Yeah.
One idea I would love to get some insight in is, again, you're currently in your master's right now in sport management, and one topic that always comes up, right? And this was always we would always have this discussion in grade 12 introduction to kinesiology, was this idea of early specialization versus late specialization. And I know that there's sort of this push to get young people to define, like, they got to pick that one sport, right? By 7 years old, I'm a soccer player, I'm a hockey player, I'm a football player. I'm curious, what is your view? Like, do you believe that it is about specializing early, or do you feel like it's beneficial to be introduced to multiple sports?
I think a little bit of both, but I definitely think it's super beneficial to be involved in various sports. Like, I'm probably not the best example in terms of where I'm going with this because I was injured a lot, but there's a lot of research out there to say that if you are involved in multiple sports, you're less likely to be injured, you're more durable, you have different strengths that you're building up by playing different sports that are useful for your other sports. And I think a lot of time I see kids in like hockey that also play soccer are hardly ever injured. Kids that are only in soccer are tend to be injured more. And that's, I'm not saying that's like any specific literature I've researched. That is a fact that I've just kind of witnessed from being involved in the sport.
Mm.
That a lot of times when kids are specializing only in one sport, they don't have this same sort of muscle mass that they're building up in other sports, that work on different things and work on different muscles. And so they're more likely to have these sort of problems. But at the same time, I think specializing in one sport can be very beneficial. What it comes down to for me most importantly is the kid having fun and what is going to be the most fun for them. So if they want to specialize in soccer because like they go to sleep with a soccer ball by their side and that's all they think about, that's all they want to do, then that is what they can focus on and that they can enjoy doing day in and day out, and we can help support that. If what is going to be most fun for them is to play both soccer and hockey and basketball, that's awesome. Like, let's support that as well. So I think in terms of like going pro, I don't really have an answer in terms of like, is early specialization better than late specialization? Because I think what we often forget is that how many percent of players are going pro? 1%, 2%. The more important question for me is what's going to be most fun for them.
I love that you always come back to that fun, right? Because it has to be fun. Like if it's not fun, you're not going to do it. You're going to half-ass it.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because, my daughter loves like gymnastics. Like her aspiration is, I want to be an Olympic gymnast. And, it's always, it's been interesting because, she has two parents that, competed, in university. So, I mean, we definitely seen, kind of what level that takes of preparation. But the interesting part is we almost feel like we have to sort of keep her in check a little bit because she really wants to do a lot, like she wants to do the 9 hours a week where we're, as a family, we've made the decision to do 6, and she stands here by me right now. But the one cool thing is, though, even though she is in the 6 hour, right, and it's kind of like that mid competitive.
Yeah.
But you know what? On the day she's not in the gym at gymnastics with her coach, she's doing cartwheels. She's doing backhand, right? I don't know all the gymnastics moves, but she's doing it and she's doing that. And you can tell like she loves it, right? So I think that's something we sometimes forget is there's got to be a love and a passion for it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's great. Like kids, they don't need us to be in charge of their learning and their sporting experiences all the time. They can do that stuff on their own as well. And you often see that the ones that do love it the most and honestly tend to perform better as well are the ones practicing on their own and enjoying it in their own home environments. And so I think that's awesome that your daughter is doing all of that stuff on her own as well and having that fun at home too.
And it's speaking of the future Olympic gymnast, it's interesting that you talked about that. And I just think back to some of the athletes that I've had the pleasure of working with, a variety of different levels, whether it was grassroots, whether it was high school, whether it was provincially, right? Or whether it's these professional athletes that I've seen is, the interesting thing, the difference between them is it comes back to the mindset, right? Is they have such a deep passion for it. And it's just their willingness to do the work, not just on game day because everyone wants, right? Everyone wants to everyone wants to wear the jersey on game day, right? And I'm sure you've, seen a lot of that. But do you have that mindset where you're willing to put in the reps and sets, when no one's watching, as cliche as that sounds? And are you willing to, like you said, go do that little bit of extra work just because you love it and you just love pushing yourself to get better?
Yeah, absolutely. There's countless examples of professionals in various sports that just practice more than other players, and that is one of the main reasons why they are so good. Ronaldo in soccer is a big one, who just is an insane workhorse, just practicing all the time. But going back to that too, it's because he loves it. He loves doing that work at home. He loves doing that work on training. He loves doing that work in games, and that is why he is so good as well. If he hated it, he wouldn't be the player that he is. And that's one of our most important roles as coaches, is to inspire these people to continue to love what they're doing so that they want to continue doing it in their home environments. And we can be a very big part in inspiring that sort of drive, that mentality that you're talking about. Sometimes it's not going to come from them themselves. We almost need to help sometimes inspire them to have that mindset, to have it come from themselves, and give them that sort of competence in what they're doing, the autonomy, that freedom to make decisions on their own, to make mistakes, to take risks. And if we can inspire those sort of things, they can start to have that mentality that they are very good at what they're doing, and continue to do it in any environment.
I love that. And really what I heard from you is like focusing on process over the product, right? Like, yes, the end product, yes, we if you're an athlete, yes, you want to win more games, you want to score more goals, right? If you're preaching for professional, you want to get the biggest contract possible, right? Like that's the end. But, and this is where I think you're going, is like that process. And I would love to share with you something I actually heard recently from someone who does work in sort of the neurosciences. And what he was sharing, and from the research they found, was we have been conditioned and programmed to believe that when I get to that goal, right? Have you ever heard, then I'll be happy, right? Like when I get to that health goal, then I'll be happy. When I get to that number of zeros in my bank account, then I'll be happy. When I get that job promotion, then I'll be happy. And I always laugh because that's like someday syndrome, right? Like that's you're delaying the joy. But and that's something I always knew and understood. But physiologically, I learned this recently. Process, you actually get more dopamine in your brain from learning to celebrate the process. Like, every time, like Ronaldo, like getting on every day, getting on and being able to touch the ball with his feet and playing a game, whether it's pickup, whether it's going out on the pitch professionally. And you get these little dopamine hits. And when you learn to really celebrate the here and the now, to be grateful for just like that you actually set yourself up more success, because you celebrate the little wins, and then your confidence grows. As your confidence grows, you get more calm. And as you get more calm, like you said, you start to realize that it doesn't matter what happens during the real game, because I've put in so much time and energy that when I get there, it's like, yeah, it happened because I simply prepared myself. So I'm curious, like, what are your thoughts on that? Physiologically, you actually get more dopamine learning to celebrate the process.
No, I think it has to be true. Like, I've definitely experienced that with myself as well. I just think when I take things day to day and focus on what I'm doing during that day, during the present moment, I'm definitely more happy, more confident in myself than when I'm thinking about the future and I'll never reach that thing that I thought I wanted. When I had failures in coaching and wasn't able to get to the place that I wanted to be in the future, I started to feel really down about myself, started to lose confidence in myself. But I'm still in the environment doing great work, during each and every day. And I should have been celebrating what I was doing. Those experiences that I was having was just as valuable to getting to where I want to go as those failures that I thought would help me get to that point.
Mhm.
That day in, day out experiences are so much more valuable. And doing that process is really key as well. Like you're saying, I think it has to be true.
And it's interesting how all these things are connected, right? And that's the one thing I love about what I do is like I'm constantly like you learning, growing, seeking, the new knowledge, right? Yeah, I have my foundation of what I do on the hour, but then I'm constantly like pushing myself to accept new ideas. But it actually does come back. So, and I think I've shared this with you. One of my favorite books, Think and Grow Rich, right? Like it's interesting. People always think it's about money, but it's not. It's about the mindset behind that. And why I say this is, learning to be present, right? What is that? What is commonly referred to? That is gratitude, right? Like being grateful. And when you truly are grateful, what is another word for being grateful? It is love, right? It's a feeling, right? It's like this feeling of you just love life and love all these little blessings there. But the interesting thing is love, if we go there, is very similar to something that's known as faith. And I'm not talking from a religious standpoint, religious faith, but what is faith? Belief. Mm-hmm. So long story short, that love, right? So gratitude, which is another word for love, when you love what you do and you have that, it's very similar to that faith and belief. And that when you have those feelings, they are two of the strongest emotions, right? And that is something that every successful and highly effective person has, right? Strong belief and a love for what they do.
Yeah, and I think you and I probably hold this very near and dear to our hearts as well, as in terms of inspiring that in other people and trying to get other people to have that same love, to then start to have that same belief in themselves. And just taking it back to what I was saying right from the very start of this is that's what I want to do. And that's what I try and do for these kids each and every day is I want to make them love what they're doing so that they start to believe in themselves and believe in what they're doing so that they can get better and better and better at it. And if they don't love it, I don't think they're going to be able to get better and better and better at it. And I think that's the same for myself as well. Yeah.
So good. And you know what? It's amazing to have these conversations because I just love your ability to be so introspective and insightful. And I love that you're just so open to hearing those ideas. And what I really got from you is, again, like you can tell, like you're passionate about helping people. Like anyone that comes across you knows that. And one of the things that makes me giggle is people always say, I know, giggle, right? Like talk about just that, is that people always say, like, how do you find your passion? How do you find what you love? And the truth of the matter is, and this goes back to what you were saying, you don't find it. You may discover it, but it's something like Ronaldo with the soccer ball. That's what the image that came to mind. You have to put in the reps and sets on a daily basis. And as you discover it, as you find it, then you nurture it, right? Like you got to be doing it. Like you actually got to do it. You can't just know what passion is. You can't just know what you love to do. Like you actually have to immerse yourself, get your hands dirty every day and just do it.
Yeah, that's something that I've really taken from all of the conversations that you've had on like the Chalk Talks and all of that is sort of this idea of like, what are you waiting for? Why are you not doing it right now? Why are you saying like, I want to be here, I'm going to do this in the future? Why not start now? And I think that's, for me, that's the biggest takeaway I've had from your community and from listening to you speak. And it's helped me in my life already, just taking that advice head on and not thinking about, okay, where do I want to be in 2022? Think about where do you want to be today? and start putting that into action right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I love. I love that you said that, right? Yeah. Have a vision for where you want to be December 31st. But like you said, move your ass into action. Like you can wish and hope for better, but if there's no action, there's no follow through. Like if you don't follow through on the action, nothing happens. And what I'll share, because I love what you say, and this gets me so fired up, juiced up, ready to go, is this is what people need to realize. So yes, you have a goal that's up here. And if you watch these chalk talks, if you watch the huddle, if you come to my masterclasses, you get it. Like you have an ambition and drive for something better, or you wouldn't watch it, right? If you didn't want better, you wouldn't be flipping watching this stuff. But every time what happens is, like you said, my goal's here. Okay, I want to be here December 31st. Okay, I'm here. But then, like you said, you got to take inspired action today. When you take inspired action, guess what's going to happen? The goal's going to get closer. Then tomorrow you take inspired action and it happens. Okay, whatever you want to call it, right? There's a popular manifestation, right? Manifestation is that idea. It's action, goal gets closer, action, goal gets closer. And that's the only way to create better results. It's not knowing, it comes from taking, like you said, focused, inspired action on a daily basis.
Yeah. And then having that belief as well that you can do that, and that the steps that you're doing in the moment during the day are actually going to be beneficial to you in that long run, and not worrying about like all that can go wrong, but starting to think more about everything that can go right instead. Yeah. That's what I've been really trying to do, especially as I work toward my goals, thinking about everything that can go right today that is going to get me to that next place.
Yeah. Win today. That's all you got to do. Win today. Then you can, right? Okay. So here's the last question I'd love to ask you, Rhys, is listen, like we've talked about, you know, depending when you're watching this last year has been an interesting year to say the least. And there is a lot of doom and gloom out there. There are people that, you know, maybe the last year has been really tough. Maybe, you know, with gyms closed, they've put on a ton of weight. Maybe they've had a relationship breakdown. Maybe their finances are, you know, they've had to drain their savings to pay the bills. Maybe it's they've lost their jobs, and maybe life has just really knocked them down and they're laying on the field kind of going, I don't know even where to begin. What is one piece of advice you would say so they can get the needle moving, so they can start creating some momentum in their life? And like, what's one action they can take today?
I think first and foremost, like taking a deep breath and actually starting to think about things in terms of less of like an emotional reaction of like, oh no, everything's going wrong, but taking a step back for a second, just starting to think about everything going on, where you are, where you versus where you want to be, and then starting to put that into action once you are in the right frame of mindset to do so. It can be very hard, I think, to have these sort of like, I want to do this when you are feeling angry, feeling upset, feeling like you're not good enough. And that last one, okay, that's harder to get yourself in the right mindset sometimes. All of them are, to be honest, but I think that's very important to take a step back, to think about how you can achieve what it is that you want by looking at it from a lens of like a wider perspective and really thinking about things from different angles, and then going from there, figuring out the best course of action once you are in the right frame of mindset to do so. And then, like we already said, some of these other things, like stop worrying about what can go wrong, start thinking about what can go right. That's a very big one for me. And obviously they should check out your community as well, because you're doing great things on here. And I think they can get a lot of advice from you and all of your different talks that you give on this community.
Awesome. I love that. And I think that that's a perfect way that summarizes something that you can do. The breath, right? Like that's what I heard from you is the breath is powerful. And we're in an age where, meditation, mindfulness, whatever you want to call it, right, is really what fundamentally it comes down to is controlling the breath,
Mhm.
right? And I love that you said, take a step back, take a deep breath, just relax, right? Just cool the jets, take a moment. And it's really, I love that because that's
Yeah.
accessible for anyone. And for any of you that are out there, because I know sometimes people say, well, I like mindfulness, meditation, all that's like voodoo, that's that. Research out of Japan is pretty definitive, and it has shown that in as little as 6 breaths, mindful deep breaths, not like the shallow chest breathing that we do typically, right? But deep belly breaths where the belly expands, that you can change your physiology. And as Rhys said, when you change your physiology, guess what's going to happen? You're going to go from that fight or flight, which again, happens from time to time where you're reactive, to where that's going to slow down. Your rest response, your parasympathetic's going to go up. And that's where, like as Rhys said, you can make a more clear decision, a more responsive decision, a more intentional decision. So I love that you shared that, Rhys. So yeah, no, that's great. First and foremost, Rhys, I wanted to thank you for coming on here and sharing your insight with us. I can't believe that we've been talking for 15 minutes. It literally feels like we've been talking for 8. And I wanted to acknowledge you for choosing to make greatness the standard in your life, and for being a shining example that it doesn't matter where you are in your journey, that you have the opportunity to step up, to lead by example, and I heard this one, to preach what you practice. So I just wanted to acknowledge you for the man you've always been, and for the amazing man that you are growing and evolving into. So thank you for that, Rhys.
Thank you, JT. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk to your audience and have these sort of ideas shared. And I hope people got something out of it and that it was enjoyable to watch. And yeah, I just really appreciate you and you asking me to do this. I had a great time doing it. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and one thing I forgot to ask you, you just talked about just rolling with it, is how can people get connected with you? I know you're doing lots of great stuff. How can people get connected to you and the work you're doing? And I'll share it all in the comments section.
Yeah, so I have a website. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I have a website called themastermindsite.com. There is a lot of like football, soccer talk on there, but there's also some sports psychology, some coach education that you might find useful if that's something that you're interested in. And you can also find me on LinkedIn, just Rhys Desmond. I'm sure you can find me and we can have a chat there if you're interested.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I've already thought about some other leaders that are doing some amazing work that I feel like, even past guests on the huddle, I'm already thinking like, oh, like Rhys needs to get connected with this person.
Yeah.
But yeah, so thank you, Rhys, for coming on. Thank you to all of you for tuning in. What I would love is if something resonated with you, I would love if you shared it in the comment section and just let us know, because I'm always curious to see what resonates with people, because I get these messages of, oh, that episode was amazing. I'm sure Rhys would love to know too, because this is why we have the conversations. It's to help and support you on your journey to greatness, and just sort of eavesdropping on our conversation. Well, thank you, Rhys, for coming on. Thanks everyone else for joining us in the huddle. I will see you next Friday, right back here in the huddle. Have a great day, everyone.